Hey guys, Triple B here. We just got a handful of new reveals coming out of Japan's upcoming set Supercharge Breaker, which is going to be making up our set Surging Sparks. Well, that with Paradise Dragona, as well as the Ceruledge and Sylven EX decks that are coming out. So just a little bit of a peek, we are getting to see obviously the booster pack art has been revealed, some illustration rares. We're getting a Pfin, a Kecleon, Cyrano, and Jasmine's Gaze coming out, which honestly all look pretty sweet. So if you're after like the alt art cards or just for some collection pieces, I feel like these are going to find a nice home in a lot of people's binders. And then, yeah, just a quick peek at the Surging Sparks booster pack. So that'll be releasing for us November 8th. So pre-releases shouldn't be too far off, and I'm sure we'll get official reveals for the rest of the set list or that. But let's just jump into what we know is coming out in... Why am I drawing a blank? What was it called? Supercharge Breaker. Yeah, so for Supercharge Breaker, the main set, we are getting some interesting stuff. We'll go over what's going to be good for standard format as well as alternate formats like GLC and budget build battles, which is actually my own format that we host tournaments for over on Limitless. So we're getting an Exeggutor. Nothing too crazy here. 10 damage, heal 10 damage off of it when you do the attack for colorless energy. It's basically there to evolve into Exeggutor, which can do 60 damage. It's going to flip a coin for every energy attached to it and a multiplier of 60 for that. So it doesn't do a base damage. It's literally just flip a coin. You're doing scaling up damage by 60. So if you have a way to rush energy out to this, or you're playing into a deck that has a bunch of energy on it, could be an interesting inclusion coming out. We do have an Alolan Exeggutor EX, so maybe including a one-off copy of this in that deck just as an alternate single prize attacker could be helpful to get around things like Mimikyu, but honestly, I think it's kind of just a gimmicky card. It'll be one of those silly things like maybe pair it with like Fortress EX, knock out Fortress, accelerate a bunch of energy to this, flip a bunch of coins, go for big knockouts, like a bit of a meme thing. Durant is getting its first multi-prize card, or I think it's its first like hyper rare, let's call it. But yeah, so Durant EX, it's got the ability Sudden Scrape. When you play this card from your hand onto your bench, you can discard the top card of your opponent's deck. So effectively mill just for benching it, which we've had a lot of Durant cards that want to mill through your opponent's deck, so having it as an ability, it makes some sense. You could try and loop this with something like Professor Turo or Penny and just repeatedly put it down to end out a game. It could be like a niche piece to have. The attack on here also not too bad. Grass Dollar colorless, 120 base damage, and then 30 more damage for each prize card your opponent's taken. So let's say they're down to their last prize, they've taken 5, you're doing 120 plus 150, you get up to 270. It's not bad. Maximum belt on there, you can get up to 320. You could be one-shotting as like Dragapult EX potentially with this. You hit weakness into Charizard EX, which is kind of relevant. And you could be paying part of the attack cost with a double turbo energy and then just a basic grass. So honestly, it's not a bad option for decks to include. I'm not sure that it's going to be very relevant, but just because kind of that like Hail Mary thing of like your opponent's gone through most of their deck. Okay, I'm going to mill them out, or a late game attacker. Yeah, not a bad option. Scatterbug showing up in here. It's called Call for Family. Search your deck for basic, put it onto your bench. We do have a Scatterbug that's got an ability already, letting it just evolve the first turn it's in play. We've got the same thing on a Spoopa. And then the Filion that we're getting though, this is an interesting one. Like the pre-evolutions are kind of just, they're there because this is in the set. We need something to evolve into it in case you pack them. You want to be able to build a deck immediately. I think that the ones with the quick evolution ability is going to be what you're playing, but this Filion has the attack evolution powder. For each of your bench Pokemon, search your deck for a card that evolves from that Pokemon and put it onto it to evolve it. So it's basically like Evo TM, but as an attack. It's on a stage 2, but we already mentioned you have those abilities that you can just immediately evolve up into this and then search your deck for evolution pieces. It's not on a TM, so it's not going to be going away at the end of your turn. You could potentially be reusing this attack. I'm not sure that it's really relevant. Like maybe there'll be some use cases. I still feel like Evo TM's just better. It's one card, you can search it out with Arven, whereas this you'd need to evolve up into it and then use it. But there might be use cases, maybe for something like GLC or budget build battles where you are focused on single prize Pokemon, could be a helpful way to kind of like set up your deck, like set up your bench. I feel like it's probably just bulk though. Pre-release though, it might come up. Getting a Capsakid, it's here to evolve into Scavilion. We're getting a Scavilion EX, which we'll cover a little bit later since it is fire type. They're not really back to back in the list here. Reor, it's got Collect, 1 colorless energy, draw a card, 40 HP on it, so you can search it out with Buddy Buddy Pfin and 1 retreat. So honestly, having the option to draw into a card, I feel like this is a pretty good reller to be able to use. We do have other rellers that I think it's like 30 damage, does a bit of damage to itself, or it's like flip a coin, doesn't do anything. So it's kind of a use case of like, which one of those do you want to be running? Obviously, rabska potentially becoming our only bench protection past rotation, right? Manaphy's going to be on its way out. We have rabska that protects your bench and prevents effects from affecting your bench. So could be a nice one to kind of have in your collection, as well as getting a new rabska, so you can potentially have it as an attacker. Since its attack twist ending does 40 base damage, then if there are 3 or fewer cards in your deck, 200 more. So 240 for 1 grass energy. If you're going to be running rabska as a way to protect your bench, having 1 copy of this in there to potentially just have it as an attacker isn't a bad shout either. Maybe you're not running grass energy, just slot in 1 luminous energy and then you have this for like late game. Yeah, not bad. Honestly, kind of keen for it. Wu Chen, kind of on that same gimmick of if you have 3 or fewer cards in your deck, does an extra thing. So 20 base damage for a grass and a colorless, but 3 or fewer cards in your deck, you do 120 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. It's a little terrifying, especially because I just said Manaphy's going to be rotating. Bench protection isn't going to be as relevant. Like if your opponent's not running rabska, you have a way to just go like snipe that. Cool. Yeah. I like it, and especially to close out games, right? Like you have 3 or fewer cards in your deck, you're either going turbo to get this off and like be looping your deck so you can repeatedly use this, or it's a way to close out games, just be able to like attach grass, e-switch to it, use this 120, like combining this with like Oberpawn maybe just to set it up quickly in the late game. It might be a great like niche thing to have. So yeah, kind of keen for it. I feel like Turbo is likely the way you'd be running it, and realistically, I think GLC and budget build battle formats are where this card's really going to shine, but might come up in standard. Pion Tauros. 1 fire energy, 30 damage, not too bad. Second attack, 1 fire energy, 2 colorless, 90 base damage. Then if your opponent's active Pokemon's a stage 1, does 90 more, so 180 into stage 1 Pokemon. It's okay, like you're not one-shotting EX, like stage 1 EXs. I guess Goldango technically because you hit it for weakness, but this is one of those things that like in GLC or in budget build battles, I could see this being relevant, right? Like Magma Base and DTE, you can get that second attack online in 1 turn. Yeah, that's pretty solid. Victini, it's got the ability Victory Cheer. Attacks used by your evolution fire Pokemon do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So it's similar to the Moltres we have from Pokemon Go that boosts your basic fire Pokemon's attack by 10, but this is boosting your evolution ones. So if you're kind of struggling to get to those breakpoint numbers and it's just like, I just need a little bit more, Victini can help. It doesn't say that this doesn't stack either, so you could have multiples of these if you're like, hey, I need to do 30 extra damage, but I don't want to run Defiance Band. But for some reason, I'm okay having 3 Victini on my bench. It's like Buddy Buddy Pfin, Nest Ball, you're good. Is there a reason to do that? Probably not. As one thing to fix up numbers, yeah, I can definitely see that coming up. For pre-release, I feel like this will be relevant. The attack on there, fire colorless 30 damage, it's not really doing anything. It's more so just to kind of fix numbers for yourself. Larvesta, it's in here to evolve into Volcarona. Volcarona's got Leech Life, 1 colorless energy, 30 damage, heal from this Pokemon the same amount of damage you did to your opponent's active Pokemon. I kind of like that, especially because fire Pokemon do have a few ways to boost up damage, right? Like you've got Ceruledge EX, you can boost it by 60. You could be doing 90, heal 90 from this. You're probably not using this with Ceruledge EX though, let's be realistic, but in single prize formats where you could be running like Rapidash that you ditch a fire energy, boost this by 30, hit something for 60, heal 60 off this, it's a bit more relevant. So I think like GLC or budget build battles, this could come up. Standard, I don't think it will. The second attack, fire double colorless, 150 damage, does 50 damage to itself. So having that first attack to be able to heal yourself off after, it's kind of relevant, but at the same time, if you're able to use that second attack, I feel like you're just kind of using it repeatedly into your opponent, right? Like you hit them twice, have a way to heal it. Like maybe you check an emergency jelly on this, you magma base into it, so it takes 20, attack twice, you're down to 30 health remaining, emergency jelly triggers, I feel like is likely the way you go, but having that first attack is kind of interesting. Sizzlipede, it's in here to evolve into Sentiscorch, let's be real. Sentiscorch has Burning Fever, 130 damage, and it's going to do 30 damage to each of your bench Pokemon. So a way to kind of like, yeah, do a bit of bench damage. If you have things that scale up based on the amount of damage counters they have, like Dodrio, which scales up based on the amount of damage it has, this could be relevant, or maybe pair it with like Aggron, who does, I think it's 50 damage for all of your guys that are damaged. Yeah, it's not a bad shout. 130 for 1 energy also, it's kind of legit, right? Like we have Steelix that does a very similar thing, and that's seen some play in Standard. Successfully, not really, but like for rogue decks, yeah, there's some logic to it. For GLC though, and budget build battles, I feel like this is a pretty solid card. Like 130 for 1 energy is big. Standard, a little bit mixed. The Fuecoco. All right, so this one, again, it's a basic Pokemon. It's in here to evolve up. It's got 80 HP, so you can't get it out with Buddy Buddy Pfin. Unfortunately, I don't think we have any 70 HP Fuecocos yet, which is very unfortunate. He's a kind of bulky boy, right? He's got the piece of cheese on his chest, and he's like, I like snacks. I don't think he's ever losing any weight. He's always going to be 80 HP or more. The Crocolar. The stage 1, yep, you're using rare candy, you're going over this. And the Skellydirge, though, honestly, I love this card. I think it's absolutely silly, and I'm so keen for it. The ability on here is pretty legit. Prevent all effects of attacks your opponent's Pokemon do to this. So if they're trying to confuse you, they're trying to paralyze you, they're trying to use Devolution TM and like knock you down to your pre-evolution and get knockouts with spread, you just go, no, that's good. I'm just gonna ignore you. So that's legit. And then the attack on it is literally Palkia V-Star, but on a single prize Pokemon. So Fire Colorless, 60 base damage, 20 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon, yours and your opponent. So you could run this with Area 0 Underdepths, right? Expand your bench to 8. Your opponent can expand their bench to 8. That's what, 16 all up, 16 times 2, 320 plus 60. You're doing 380 without any damage modifiers. That is if your opponent decides to fill their bench. They don't have to, right? But if they're like a very bench dependent deck, yeah, they're going to be feeling some pain. You also have ways to scale this damage up though, right? Like it's a fire type Pokemon, so you could be using Rapidash, ditch your fire energy, boost your damage by 30, or it's Skellydirge, you can run it with Skellydirge EX, ditch your fire energy, boost your damage by 60. It's a Terra Pokemon, so it makes Area 0 Underdepths come online. Yep, I'm so keen for this deck, honestly. It's pretty silly. And yeah, it's also one of those things like GLC, budget build battles, this is going to be a force, especially budget build battles. Like I see this being a top tier deck in that format. So yeah, about a month from now, there's going to be a big meta shift in that. And I'm keen for it, honestly, very keen for it. Charcadet, 80 HP, can't get it with Buddy Buddy Pfin. We do have 70 HP Charcadets, I believe, so I don't think this one will be replacing them anytime soon. It's more so that if you pull this in pre-release, you have a way to evolve up into Armarouge, you have a way to evolve up into Ceruledge EX if you pull that. We're getting a new Armarouge though, 2 colorless energy, 50 damage. It's okay. It's an attack you can use a little bit faster if you don't have enough energy to use the second attack, but the second attack, 2 fire and a colorless Crimson Blaster. Discard all fire energy from this Pokemon. It does 180 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So sort of like the Kyogre that we have. Kyogre, I think, is 4 energy, does 180 to something, bounce through those energy back, but Armorers is just like, just bin them all. 1 less energy, snipe something off the bench. Yeah, legit. That's pretty legit. We do have a Moltres already as well. That's 3 fire energy, ditch to 120 to something on their bench. So this is just kind of like a buffed up version of that. And honestly, keen for it. Like, it's an interesting card to have. It gives some bench snipe potential to like Armarouge EX or Ceruledge EX decks if you want. Getting the energy onto it in Ceruledge EX will be a little bit more awkward. I don't really think they run a lot of energy acceleration, but it's definitely something you could kind of play around with and a great tool to have in your back pocket. Single prize Ceruledge though, it's got Blaze Curse. Discard all special energy from each of your opponent's Pokemon. That's kind of evil. I don't think there's enough matchups where this is relevant that it will see play, but like if you see a lot of Lugia V-Star at your local league and you're like, I want to counter to that, and I'm running Armarouge already, like you're running the one to move fire energy around, or you're running the EX, or you're running Ceruledge EX, just check in 1 copy of this, be like, oh, I paired Lugia. Oh, you accelerated a bunch of energy out with your Archeops? That's gonna go away now. Mist energy will block this. That prevents effects done to that Pokemon, so any special energy attached to Pokemon that have mist energy on them, they'll be fine, but like everything else goes away. So I'd maybe have like a copy of Temple of Sinnoh still, just so it's like, your special energy aren't doing anything, and then I'm discarding them all. A little bit evil. Other than that one use case though, I don't really see this coming up. So like realistically, I don't see this being relevant, but it's a cool card nonetheless. The second attack, 160 damage during your next turn. This can't attack. 3 energy to use it. It's a little too expensive, but interesting tool to have in your back pocket for sure. Filion EX. I like this guy. Honestly, I just like the design of this Pokemon. I'm a big fan of spicy food, so when we get like spicy food Pokemon, it's like, yep. Like Skellydirge, I thought he was going to be like a ghost pepper Pokemon. He's still cool. He's like a weird Danny DeVito, Pennywise crocodile. Filion though, yeah, he's my spirit animal. So as long as this Pokemon's in play, it's grass and fire type. So you're hitting weakness into Charizard, you're hitting weakness into steel Pokemon and grass Pokemon. It's pretty neat. The attack on here though, 2 fire energy, spicy rage, does 10 base damage and 70 more damage for each damage counter on it. So if you're using Magma Basin to get an energy onto this, you're boosting the damage output by 140 just off 1 proc of Basin. You can use Damage Bump to scale this up even faster, right? It's kind of like, what was it? Radiant Heatran? I think that scaled up by 70 and it was just like Basin to it, Damage Bump to it, go. Same logic applies to this. So yeah, keen for it. Potentially you pair this with the Sizzlipedes, I think is what we call them. The weird little centipede fire guy that did 130 for 1 fire energy, hurt your bench. That with this, before it gets evolved up, just boosting some damage output for it. Could be relevant. And yeah, it's what, 5 damage on this, you're doing 360. Yeah, that's legit. We are getting a Pion Tauros. This one's water. So we had the red one, now we got the blue one. It's kind of like the Matrix, but red pill, blue pill. Red Bull, blue bull. Except Red Bull's a drink and Blue Bull is 1 letter off being an innuendo. Moving on. We've got double colorless energy, 30 damage. You can put up to 2 energy attached to your opponent's active stage to put 2 Pokemon into their hand. So a great way to kind of just like mess with your opponent's board state. If you're into Dragapult EX, they need 2 energy to attack. They don't have a lot of ways to accelerate out other than like the crystal A-spec. So like if you can get rid of that tool and then they're having to manually attach twice, it's like cool, bounce those, it buys me a bit of time. Or into Charizard where they evolve up, accelerate energy out with their ability, you go cool, bounce those, find myself some time. Like they've got to manually attach twice or get another Charizard online and then you just go with another Tauros and just bounce them back into their hand. Yeah, kind of legit, kind of disruptive, kind of for it. The second attack on here though, 2 water and a colorless, 100 damage. It's all right. Like there would be times where I feel like you use that just to speed the game up a bit more, but the fact that the first attack is double colorless, you could be using DTE, you're just hitting 10 damage, but you're really disrupting your opponent. So like in control decks, even just as a one-off copy, I could see this being relevant. Feebas, 1 colorless energy, switch this with one of your bench Pokemon. So if you really want Feebas to not get knocked out in the active, just eat him out of there. It's going to evolve up to Milotic EX, which I'm very keen for this card. The ability on here, Sparkling Scales. You prevent all damage and effects done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Terra Pokemon. There is a lot of very relevant Terra Pokemon in the format. It's sort of like Mimikyu that's invincible into like EXs and Vs, except this is a bit more limited into just only the Terra Pokemon. But it's Charizard, it's Dragapult, Ceruledge EX coming out in this set. It's one. Those are kind of relevant, right? Raging Bolt EX will get through this. The Ogerpon in their deck won't. So it's, yeah. I feel like you're going to have a lot of really good matchups with this card. 160 damage for water, double colorless, and you're going to put your opponent to sleep, meaning they're going to have to flip a coin. So even for those things where they can do damage into you, like that Raging Bolt, it's like, well, just hit them first. They have to find a way to switch out to get around the sleep, or they have to get heads and get through it. So yeah. Honestly, I think that this is going to be a pretty legit deck. You have things like Excalibur to help pay for the energy cost, right? Just accelerate 3 water energy out to it and you're good to go. Or you could be using DTE and a water energy. There'll be some other ways to get it charged up as well, I'm sure, in the future. We're getting a new Spheal card. Powder Snow, 10 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon's now asleep. Like, kind of legit. Putting things to sleep. Like it's a guaranteed thing, right? And then they have to coin flip out of it. Instead of 10 damage, flip a coin to see if they're paralyzed. I like the ones where it's just like, you're definitely this thing. Can you get out of it? Like they can evolve, they can switch out, but Seriously, like they need to find a way out. It's like into basic decks like Raging Bolt, which we just mentioned, make them have to work to potentially get that attack off. It's legit. Evolve them to Celio, you're rare candying over this, right? You're a water Pokemon, you're using Arita, you're grabbing your evolution, you're grabbing your rare candy, you're going past Celio. But the Whalrin, 1 water energy, 60 damage during your opponent's next turn. Pokemon with 2 or fewer energy attached can't attack. This isn't an effect on the defending Pokemon, this is literally on your opponent. So it's like, I don't care if you switch out, I don't care if you evolve. Anything that you try and attack me with this turn needs at least 3 energy or you're doing nothing, right? They can't even like bounce this out of the active and be like, oh, the effect's gone. It's like, nope, that effect just stays for your whole turn. So if you have a lot of ways to disrupt their energy, right? Like that Pion Tauros where you're bouncing energy back into their hand and kind of slowing them down. And then eventually you get Whalrin out and you're just like, you need a bunch of energy to attack now. And I've like negated your Charizard that accelerated energy out. They're evolved up. You can't do that anymore. You have to manually attach. And then as they're manually attaching, you're just like crushing hammer, or like Giovanni's Charisma. Like you're just removing their energy constantly. I could see this being legit. And that just a bit terrifying. It also means like your opponent's going to have to commit a lot of energy to be getting attacks off, right? It's like Raging Bolt, they kind of want to be spreading the energy around. They're getting energies onto Ogre Pawns. They're getting energies onto the Raging Bolts, potentially E-switching onto them, right? Like it's Sada to 2 Raging Bolts, attach for turn, that's 2. But now they're going to have to use an energy switch onto the Raging Bolt so that they have 3 to declare an attack. And then they have to ditch energy, which they'd likely just ditch the energy off their benched Ogre Pawns, keeping it on that Raging Bolt. But you're going to make people have to play some mental gymnastics if you play this deck. And I feel like someone's going to crack the code and make this genuinely kind of broken. I could definitely see this being like, probably not tier 1, but I could see it being like a tier 2, tier 2.5 deck for sure. Shellos, it's in here to evolve into Gastrodon. The Gastrodon is going to be a fighting type though, so we'll cover it a little bit later. Iron Bundle, it's got an attack for water, double water, colorless, gust collision, 200 damage, but there is a bit of a reduction on here. It's going to do 50 less damage for each energy in your opponent's active's retreat cost. So if you're hitting something that has free retreat, you're doing 200, like into a Pidgeot EX, you're just going 200. But if you're hitting something like a Iron Thorn, so I think is what, 3 or 4 energy, you're doing like nothing. It's interesting. I don't think it'll see play. I think it's just, hey, Iron Bundle is a neat Pokemon, give him some more cards, but yeah, it's a neat one to pull, I guess. Chin Pao, the ability on here is Snowsyn. When you play this from your hand onto your bench, you can discard a Stadium and play. So it's basically Pumpkaboo getting a reprint, but as a Weasel with swords for teeth. So it's literally, you're throwing this from your hand and it is just biting that Stadium. Like it's just gone. Get it out of here. I like it. It's a water Pokemon, so you could search this out with a Rita while getting an item from your deck. In water decks, like it's just a great tech to be able to get into. For other decks, like Ultra Ball into this, it's not a bad shout. The attack on here also isn't that bad. So 2 water energy and a colorless. You do 120. You're going to put an energy attached to this back into your hand. So like into Baxcalibur decks, I feel like this is an all right thing to be able to use. 120 is a decent enough number, right? Like you can get through a Mimikyu. You can get through a Mimikyu that's got a Bravery Charm on, right? They have 70 base HP. Bravery Charm brings them up to 120. They're trying to wall your EXs. This comes out and it's like, I hit the perfect number and I get rid of your Stadium. Neat. Yeah, that's legit. For GLC, I feel like it's a great addition for water decks, giving them that Stadium disruption, and for budget build battles, I feel like it's also a great option to be able to have. Standard though, yeah, it's definitely going to see play. Like Stadium removal is always relevant. Pikachu EX, if you haven't seen this guy already, well, you are in for a treat. It's a Terra Pokemon, so you can't hit Milotic. Could be relevant, right? You hit it for weakness, but you don't hit it at all, so neat. But the ability on here, if this is at full HP and would be knocked out from damage, it's not knocked out, it just goes down to 10 HP. This is a basic Pokemon, so you could be using Penny, right? Like you could tank a hit, you go down to 10, you go Penny, you just pick that back up. And you're good to go. Then you just put it back down like nothing happened. It's back at full HP. If they try and hit you again, it's like, cool, I'll go back down to 10. That's fine. Like I can do this all day. It's literally Captain America is a Pikachu now. Sorry, I bumped the mic. But yeah, pretty legit. The attack on here being a grass, lightning, and steel energy is a little bit awkward, but it does 300 damage. You do discard 3 energy from this Pokemon when you do that though, so you need ways to accelerate that out or potentially recover that energy, like maybe Power Glass just to be able to get one of those back, attach for turn, Crispin the following turn could be a way to get this looped out, or the way that it's literally just this deck in one box, we'll cover in a second. But for this also, hitting 300 damage, very, very relevant. You put a maximum belt on there, you're hitting 350, you're knocking out anything in the format. Stage 2 EX Pokemon, get them out of here. Potentially, you could be running this with like Binding Mochi, poison yourself. You do 40 extra damage because you're poisoned. The risk that that has though is between turns, you take 10 damage, you're shutting off your own ability. So I don't recommend going that route. I'd say you're going maximum belt or you're going Defiance Band for this. Binding Mochi, cool card, awful card for this. But yeah, all that said, the way we're getting this online, hey, there's Magnemite and there's Magneton. So the ability on here, Overvolt Discharge, once during your turn, you can attach 3 basic energy cards from your discard pile to your lightning Pokemon in any way that you'd like. Pikachu's a lightning Pokemon, we can get 3 basic energy. Doesn't say they have to be the same type or they're lightning type, just 3 basic energy. So we're getting grass, we're getting lightning, we're getting steel, we're putting them on Pikachu. Snite. And then if you use this ability, you're knocking this out. Which is also legit, because I just mentioned, hey, Defiance Band boosts you up by 30 extra damage, puts Pikachu up to 330. You're giving up a prize, you're behind on prizes, Defiance Band's online. You can one-shot a Charizard EX, you can one-shot a Dragobolt EX. You're also getting Counter Catcher online, so if they're trying to hide a 2 prize Pokemon from you, it's like, no, bring that in the active, I'm gonna delete that now. Cool beans. And yeah, you're having a good time. So Pikachu seems like a pretty legit deck coming out of one set. Like it's got my Magneton, I've got my Pikachu. Cool. Staple cards, chuck them in. Like your researches, your Ionos, like all that stuff you likely already have if you're playing the game already. And then it's just getting your Pikachus and your Magnetons. I don't really think there's anything else in the set you need. It's kind of just ready to go out of the box. It evolves up into Magnezone though. So if you want to have it in there as a single prize attacker, you could. Lightning, double colorless, 80 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat either. So they have to evolve through that confusion or they have to use a dedicated switch card. They can't just hard retreat out. So you could lock things in the active with this. Second attack, lightning, triple colorless, 180 damage. This Pokemon can't use Zap Cannon during your next turn though, so you can't just like repeatedly shoot into something with this. You could switch this out and like pivot it back in if you wanted to. I don't think you're ever really using that attack though. It's interesting to have it in here as an option though. Like if you need something to go through a Mimikyu, you could slot in one of these to go for the first attack, I feel like. Getting a new Rotom could be an interesting card for control decks. So Crash Pulse, your opponent reveals their hand, discard any items and tool cards you find there. So it's kind of like Eerie mixed with Sydney, but on an attack. Kind of legit, right? Like if they're holding rare candies, they're holding Evo TMs, you're going second. Like they're holding those to be able to evolve up next turn. You're just going, no, that's good. Just get rid of those. You don't need them. It also gets rid of their Buddy Poppins, their Nest Balls, their Ultra Balls, Super Rods, Night Stretchers. Like there's a lot of good stuff you can be getting rid of. So yeah, Rotom's kind of legit. I'm not much of a control player, so like I won't speak too much to this, but control players listening to this might be like, no, it's awful, it's garbage. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know. I don't play those decks enough to really comment too deeply on them, but to me, I see this and it's like, yeah, that seems kind of frustrating. Like as a one-off card, that's a bit annoying. Has 80 HP, so you can't target it with Buddy Poffin at least, but Nest Ball for it. If you want, I guess Miraidon can get it out. So there's ways to get it set up quickly. Blitzel, 70 HP on this guy though, so you can get him with Buddy Poffin. Add-on draws a card for colorless energy, and you can do 20 for lightning colorless. It's alright. It evolves up into Zebstrika. It has 2 attacks with no text that just say numbers. Neat. You might run this in pre-release. Stunfisk, lightning colorless, does 50 damage. Flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed, and discard an energy from that Pokemon. So Crushing Hammer with some damage and paralyzing them? That's legit. Paralysis, they have to evolve through, they have to switch out. It's not that they're flipping a coin to get through it, so potentially you could just be like paralyzed, locking them while disrupting them and doing some chip damage. So yeah, Stunfisk, not bad. I could definitely see this being relevant in like potentially GLC. I know some people have tried to make like a lightning control type deck, so this could come up there, especially where you have cards like Glimwood Tangle that lets you reflip coins to help make sure that you're getting that paralysis, or Will, which guarantees a coin flip. Right? Like you go Will, you go VS Seeker, you could just kind of loop this. Maybe. Standard, I don't know. I feel like we have better options, but maybe someone will cook something up with it. Tapu Koko, Call for Thunder, search your deck for 2 lightning Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand. So a great way to get your evolution pieces out. Searching your deck for 2 basic lightning Pokemon, we have Miraidon that just does that for free and doesn't end your turn because it's not on attack. So this, I feel like, is just a way to get your evolutions out. So yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things, like maybe for GLC, but at the same time, you're probably just going Evo TM if you're trying to get into evolutions, but as a way to just be able to go like Thunder Mountain, get this on the bench, switch into it, attack, could come up. There's better Tapu Kokos for that format though, but maybe. The second attack on here though, double lightning and a colorless, does 90 damage, but if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, 90 more, so 180, that's kind of legit. So there is some playability to this card. For standard though, I don't really see it being relevant, especially since we don't have a great way to accelerate lightning energy out. Like we've got Electric Generator, but if you're using Electric Generator, you're charging up bigger attackers than Tapu Koko. Maybe as a way to get through Mimikyu, it could come up, but I don't know, kind of mixed on this. I think pre-release it'll be good though. Wattrel, Aerial Ace, 10 damage, flip a coin, if heads, 20 more. This is, yeah, again, one of those cards that like for pre-release, it could be okay just to get some early game pressure out. Maybe as a pre-evolution for like a Killer Wattrel deck at some point, but we already have a United Wings Wattrel, so I feel like that's kind of just the one that if people playing Wattrel, you're likely playing it in United Wings. I don't think we really have any other relevant Killer Wattrels. This one though, it's going to do 50 damage for double colorless or 160 for double lightning colorless. Move all energy from this to your bench Pokemon in any way that you'd like. So you're committing 3 energy to do a decent number, but you're getting to conserve that energy by moving it to the bench. So it's like if your opponent knocks this thing out, it's like that's fine, the energy's still in play. So I like that. Like for GLC, for budget build battles, this could be really legit. For standard, not really. We're getting a Miraidon, so lightning colorless, 40 damage during your opponent's next turn. Prevent all damage done to your future Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. This Pokemon leaves the active spot though, the effect stops working. So if they're trying to do spread damage with an EX Pokemon, it's protecting your bench. And if they're trying to do direct damage, they just use Gust. And they get around this, and then they can do damage with their EX Pokemon. Okay. It's interesting. I personally feel like it's bulk, but it's interesting. Like it's kind of just like a worse Mimikyu, right? Mimikyu is just, hey, I don't even need to use an attack if you try and hit me with an EX or a V. I'm invincible. This is you have to use an attack. And then it's like, okay, well, you're protected from an EX Pokemon, but if I can just get around you, it's the same as if you had Mimikyu, right? Like they just gust around you. They can do the same thing into Miraidon, so yeah. That's not seeing play. Togepi, 30 damage for 2 colorless. It's in here to evolve up, right? Togetic, it's in here to evolve. Togekiss, this is the spice. It's got the ability Wonder Kiss. Whenever your opponent's active Pokemon gets knocked out, flip a coin. If heads, take 1 more prize card. The ability doesn't stack though, so it's not like you could have 4 Togekiss, flip 4 coins, take 4 extra prizes, right? Like knock out an EX, take 6 prizes. That's not going to happen, but it's anytime the active Pokemon's knocked out. It doesn't say from an attack. So you can knock out the active Pokemon with a Duskmar, take a prize off it, flip a coin, maybe take an extra prize off it. You could knock out the active Pokemon with an effect like Poison or Burn. You flip a coin for an extra prize, right? Like there's a lot of things where it's like, oh, if you do it, only if you do it with damage, you get an extra thing. This is just like, no. If the thing in the active goes down, this triggers. So I like that. It's a really interesting card, and honestly keen to see what people cook up with this. I think it will be relevant in standard, especially because you could just run like a 1-1 Togepi Togekiss line in decks that already have rare candy. It's like, hey, like just slotting this in can speed up the prize race for me. Cool. Is it going to come up every game? No, but it's no different than like Pokemon Catcher, right? Where it's like, hey, coin flip for Gust. If it hits, great. It could win me a game. If it doesn't, it's kind of fine. I have other cards that I can use. This is the same logic, right? If it hits, great. It's going to swing the game heavily in my favor. Like, I'm ahead in the prize race. I have card advantage now. I'm closer to winning the game faster. Yeah, that's legit. We're getting the Lake Trio. So Uxie, 1 Psychic Energy, Painful Memories, put 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. They don't already have to be damaged or anything. It's just straight up like, everybody takes 2 damage. Well, 2 damage counters. It's not damage, so it gets past Manaphy, which is relevant. It's a basic Pokemon putting damage counters though, so it won't get past Jirachi or Rabska, but gets past Manaphy, so I like that. The Mesprit, 1 colorless energy, attach up to 2 basic psychic energy from your hand to your Pokemon in any way that you'd like, so it could be a great way to accelerate some energy out. Second attack, double psychic, 160 damage, but you can only use this attack if you have Uxie and Azelf on your bench. It's a little bit more limited, maybe for GLC or budget build battles, like if you're kind of leaning into these as like a deck. It's like, yeah, cool, that's an interesting theme and it could be relevant. The Azelf though, I feel like is kind of like the big attacker. So Psychic colorless, 10 base damage, but then 10 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's Pokemon. Doesn't say your opponent's active Pokemon, just your opponent's Pokemon, period. So you're using the, what was it, the Uxie? Yeah, the Uxie, you're spreading damage, and then you're going into the Azelf that's like, cool, you spread damage, and now I'm going to delete them. The other nice thing about both these things, they don't have abilities, which means you can easily pair them with Frostlass, so between turns, your opponent's Pokemon that have abilities are getting damage counters out, and then it's scaling up the damage output of your Azelf. It's kind of legit. I like it. I could definitely see this being relevant in like GLC for sure, because Psychic decks, you can do quite a bit of spread shenanigans. Like we've got Weezing that does damage counters between turns and does spread. We've got a Dusknoir to put out like move around damage counters and things like that. And then you have this to just be like a big delete cannon. For budget build battles, pairing this with Frostlass, I feel like it's going to be a solid deck. For standard, I'm not sure that it's going to scale up quickly enough to be relevant, just with how fast some decks are. And the fact that like your opponent could just go like Dusclops, Dusknoir, knock one of these out, attack, knock another one out. Like they're going to take most of their prizes before you get up to the point where you're doing enough to one-shot into their EX Pokemon. Could come up though, right? Because like if you get one big attack off with an Azelf, you're half hitting into something. Then that damage is effectively added to your next attack that you're doing. And then any extra damage counters you're getting on their board is scaling up that. It's like, it can snowball. I just don't know that it's going to snowball fast enough for standard. But for single prize formats, absolutely, these guys are going to shine. Yamask, 10 damage and 20 damage. No text on those. It's going to evolve into Cofagrigus. Cofagrigus has Underworld Law. You put 6 damage counters on each Pokemon in play that has an ability, yours and your opponent's. So if you just don't have things that have abilities, you're laughing. This is another great thing you can pair with the Uxie and Azelf. I like that, right? Like that's basically taking down Manaphy in one go. Like you pair this with Frostlass, it's 6 damage counters on the Manaphy. Frostlass does 10 to it. You're in a good way. The tricky thing about this though, Frostlass doesn't damage itself, but Cofagrigus will be damaging the Frostlass. So it's one of those risky things of like, do you pair these together? Maybe not. But for those other guys, like the Azelf, the Uxie, I feel like this is just a solid single prize deck waiting to be made. Esper, 1 colorless energy, see through, your opponent reveals their hand. I feel like we've had that on abilities before, so using that as an attack feels a bit weak. Second attack, 20 damage for 2 energy. It's here to evolve. Meow Stick has the ability Tempting Tail. You must discard a relaxing teaser card from your hand in order to use this ability. But once during your turn, you can switch in your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. So it's boss's orders, except instead of using a supporter card, you're effectively using an item card, but you need a stage 1 Pokemon out to be able to activate it in that way. The other use for that item card is, I think if you go second, you can use it on the first turn of the game and you discard an energy or you bounce an energy into their hand. So it's Disruption in the early game and Gust in the late game. Seems legit. We also don't have confirmation that Boss's Orders is getting a reprint yet, so Boss might be rotating. This could become the new Gust, right? Like Prime Catcher, Counter Catcher, Pokemon Catcher, and this might be what we have next year. I feel like Boss is just one of those staple cards though, that they're always going to reprint it and they just haven't got around to it yet, but there is the risk of that happening. So Meow Stick, yeah, probably want to pick some of these up just to be safe. We're getting Dedenne Electromagnetic Sonar. Put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. So for control decks, this could be legit. You can get it with Buddy Buddy Pfin, colorless energy. You can charge it up with like any special energy, gift energy onto it if you want. And yeah, just looping any trainer card. It's pretty legit. Like you can be looping your like counter catchers and things like that for pretty heavy disruption. Sandy Gas, 3 colorless energy, 50 damage. Kind of legit attack for a basic pre-evolution Pokemon. A little bit expensive, but if you're running ways to accelerate energy out, like, yeah, it might come up set of numbers. The EX it's going to evolve into, though, has Sand Tomb, 160 damage. The defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. So you can be locking something in the active. They can evolve through, they can switch through. There's ways to get around it, but it's still like, you can be making them burn through resources and put quite a bit of pressure onto them. The second attack on here, though, Berryite Tail. You're going to put damage counters on each of your opponent's bench Pokemon until their HP remaining is 100. So it's basically Earthen Seal Stone, except it's not limited to just Vs. It's anything on their bench down to 100 HP remaining. That's a little bit spicy, right? That sets up plays for like Devolution TM, just devolve their whole board. They go down to pre-evolutions that have likely less than 100 HP. From their EXs, right? Like Charizard EX has 330 HP. You devolve it into a Charmeleon, all of a sudden it's got 90. It's gone, right? It's on 230 damage. It's knocked out. You can be going for some pretty dirty board wipes with Devolution TM. You could also be using things like Dusknoir to knock out the EXs, right? They go down to 100 health remaining. Dusknoir knocks itself out. 130 damage onto that. You take 2 prizes, you're giving up 1. You're getting pretty good prize advantage in that situation. So yeah, I feel like there's going to be ways to make Palossand work. It's just finding ways to pay for the attack cost. It's going to be a little bit awkward. Needing a water, a psychic, and a fighting. It's a bit tricky. It is a Terra Pokemon, so you could be using the Crystal A-Spec where it reduces the attack cost by 1 energy of any type. And then for Psychic, potentially you pair it with Xatu, and then you just manually attach another energy to it. So there's ways to get this all in 1 turn. Yeah, seems legit. In DD, it's got the ability Caretaker Heal. When you play this card from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you can heal 30 damage and a status condition from your active Pokemon. So it's a great way to remove paralysis, remove poison, remove like burn, confusion, sleep. Get rid of that kind of stuff. 30 damage is not like super relevant, but it could come up. Is this card going to see play? In very niche situations? Maybe. Realistically, I'm going to say no, though. I think it's one of the pre-release cards for Surging Sparks, though. So in that format, yeah. Standard, probably not. And like other formats, probably not. Fluttermane getting a new card. It's got an attack for 2 colorless energy, Bewildering Transfer. Move all damage counters from one of your benched ancient Pokemon to your opponent's active Pokemon. All right. Well, we've got Roaring Moon EX that does 200 damage to itself and gets in range of being easily knocked out by things. Your opponent usually responds by just instantly knocking you out, but if they don't, you could go into a Fluttermane, Sada attach for turn, move all that damage onto their guy. Not bad. Second attack on here, 70 damage for 2 Psychic Energy. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon's attacks do 30 less damage. You've got 90 HP, even with like an Ancient Boost Capsule, you're at what, 150? This, I guess, brings you up to 180 if they're trying to one-shot you. I don't know, like even for single prize formats, mixed feelings on it. I guess you could penny loop it, so yeah, maybe for something like budget build battles, it could be relevant. Mankey, Dual Chop, 1 colorless energy. You're going to flip 2 coins for each head's 10 damage. It's okay. You're going to evolve into Primeape, 30 damage, flip a coins. If heads, discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So Crushing Hammer with 30 damage on a stage of 1. But the new Annihilate, 130 damage for a fighting energy. This Pokemon is now confused. The second attack is fighting colorless. Both active Pokemon are knocked out. That's kind of legit. Like you could use this just as like a suicide bomber into an EX and be like, I take 2 prizes, you take 1. All right. Maybe if Annihilate EX becomes relevant ever, or that other Annihilate that does like 70 damage for each prize card your opponent's taken ever comes up. Could work, right? Because like you'd be giving up a prize, you're scaling up the damage of that other single prize one. I think it's a funny concept, but the fact that it's on a stage 2 and it's a fighting type, so there's not great ways to accelerate out the energy. I don't think it's relevant, but it's a kind of funny one. Pion Tauros, we're getting another one of these. So we got what? Fire, water, and now we're getting a fighting type. Smash Kick, fighting colorless, 40 damage. Block Stomp, fighting double colorless, 90 damage. If the defending Pokemon's a basic Pokemon, it can't attack during your opponent's next turn. Okay, so it forces them to have to switch out or, yeah, potentially do nothing into you. We're getting a new Pfin. It's here to evolve. We're getting a Donphan, Overwhelm, 40 damage. This attack's damage isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. Alright, so like it's Shred, but 40 damage. It's a fighting Pokemon, so you could be scaling that up with Grant to do 70, I guess. And it's a stage 1, so is there anything relevant for that? I guess Practice Studio doesn't really come up. Second attack, though, Guard Rolling, 120 damage. Discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. During your opponent's next turn, this takes 100 less damage from attacks. So this one, that's pretty spicy. 120 isn't a bad number. Scale that up with Grant, we already mentioned, gets you up to 150. But the nice thing about this, we do have, I want to say Rock Chestplate, which makes it so you take, I think it's 30 less damage from attacks if you're on a fighting Pokemon. We also have Rigid Band that makes it so stage 1 Pokemon take less damage from attacks. We also have Pot Helmet that I think makes it so you take 20 or 30 less if you're a non-rule box card. So there's a lot of ways to kind of boost up this damage reduction. So for something like GLC or budget build battles, this is a tank deck. It's pretty legit. The other nice thing about being a fighting Pokemon, we have a Lake Acuity that if you have a fighting energy attached, you take 20 less damage from attacks. So it's another way to scale this up. So with like a Pod Helmet and that Stadium in play, you can be taking 150 less damage from attacks, effectively bringing you up to 300 HP if they're going for a one-shot on you. If they're going for multi-hits, you have a lot more than 300 HP on this. The Gastrodon, this card, honestly, so keen for. I think it definitely helps kind of fix the format at the moment. So one of the, I was going to say problem children of the format, but he's not really a problem child because he's a stage 2, Dusknoir, right? They knock that out. They can take knockouts. They can go behind on prizes. They can get counter catchers online. It's a little bit silly at the moment. Gastrodon helps with that. So its ability Sticky Bind makes it so if this is on your bench stage 2 Pokemon in play, yours and your opponents don't have any abilities. So Dusknoir, unless they have it in the active spot, or if they gust your Gastrodon into the active, they can't use it, right? They could gust your Gastrodon into the active though, or have Dusknoir in the active, use its ability, do 130 damage. That's exactly enough to knock out the Gastrodon. So I feel like it kind of reintroduces that like, oh, I have this piece. Okay, well, here's the counterplay. Like it's an interesting tech piece where it becomes more of an interactive game instead of just your opponent's doing all these things, they taking prizes, nothing's happening. It's like, nope, I have a way to block you. It's like, okay, how do you respond? So I like this. This is like genuinely perfectly balanced and I'm so keen for it. It's also going to shut down things like Charizard EX, right? If they're trying to evolve up into Charizard while it's on their bench, they don't get energy. If they're trying to use Pidgeot to search through their deck for any card, they need it in the active or they need to gust this into the active. So if they're trying to use Pidgeot on the bench and they're like, oh, I need a boss to get through this Gastrodon, well, they can't use Pidgeot to get that boss. So that's pretty funny. Also into Lugia, they've got Archeops that accelerates energy out from their deck. They don't often have Archeops in the active. They're not getting energy with that. And Gardevoir EX, which also doesn't really like being in the active, man, doesn't have an ability. Excalibur doesn't have an ability. Gastrodon, cool card. Very keen for this. I have, like, honestly, I think this is such a well-designed card and very excited for it to enter the format. We're getting Glimmet, Rock Hurt, 10 damage. This attack's damage isn't affected by resistance. It's like pseudo shred for 10. All right. Glamora, Corrosive Shards, 20 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. During your opponent's next turn, the opponent can't attach any energy from their hand to the defending Pokemon. Okay. That's interesting. They can switch and evolve through to still get energy out into it, but like, it's an interesting way to slow down the game, I guess, a bit. Koraidon, Intense Assault, double colorless energy, 30 base damage, and if one of your other ancient Pokemon used an attack during your last turn, does 150 more damage. That's kind of spicy. So you get up to 180. It's fighting, so you can use Grant. You can get up to 210. You can use other damage modifiers and boost that up. For single prize formats, I really like this. For standard, I think it's pretty legit, right? Like you're a fighting Pokemon, so you could slot this into Roaring Moon, pay that colorless attack cost with Soda attached for turn using Dark Energy. You hit weakness into their, what can't I think of his name? The turtle, Terrapagos EX, right? You can be shredding into a Terrapagos, 180, double that, you're doing 360. I think even with Bouffalant and like Bravery Charms, you're one-shotting them. They get capped at like 330. So it's just like, hey, here's the silver bullet for that. Great. Even if you have Mist Energy, which prevents like their gouging. I can't think of his name. I was going to say gouging fire. That doesn't sound right. Roaring Moon's attack where he declares you're knocked out. They have Mist Energy, it blocks that. You just go into this, right? You attack with a Roaring Moon on a previous turn. You switch into this, you delete a Terrapagos. The nice thing about this too, it doesn't say like you can't loop Koraidon. So you could attack with the Koraidon. This one gets knocked out, you can go into another Koraidon. You can attack with that, you're doing the extra damage. So yeah, for like budget build battles, I think this is going to be a very relevant attacker. The Dragon type Koraidon, people have tried to kind of work into like Ancient Box decks in that format. I think this just becomes the, hey, this is the go-to. Like it seems solid. For standard, also seems solid. For GLC, I don't really think it'll be good. I don't know how much play the ancient Pokemon are seeing playing that. Like maybe Great Tusk. I don't think there's any other relevant fighting ancient Pokemon. Sandy Shocks and Great Tusk, I guess. Like, yeah, maybe there's a way to make like an ancient GLC deck. Dino Stomp Off, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. A little bit of mill. The Hisuelis it evolves into, one dark energy, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So it's literally like, hey, I have a second head, I discard a second card from your deck. And then what evolves into Hydreigon EX, crash heads, it's going to be doing 200 damage. So the previous ones weren't doing any damage, and it's going to be discarding the top 3 cards of their deck. So it's literally each head he has is just like, I'm going to eat a card. When he gets 3 heads, go chomp, 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 and hits you. It's kind of legit. Disruptive and applying pressure. The second attack on here, 130 damage to the active, and it's also doing 130 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So still kind of keeping in that theme of, I have 3 heads. 1 hits the active, the other 2 go for your bench. I love that. Like, I like when they actually kind of lean into the themes of the cards. Very interesting, and kind of keen to cook with this card. The attack costs, though, are a little bit awkward. So I feel like it's mostly in there for the first attack, right? Like, you can use Dark Patch attach for turn, 200 damage, mill through their deck a bit. The second attack being Psychic Dark Steel colorless. Like, you can still use attach Dark Patch to pay for 2 of them. You could use the Crystal to reduce down by 1 more energy, and theoretically a Crispin to get another energy out and charge it up in 1 turn. It's a big commitment to do 130 damage to 3 things, especially because Terra Pokemon are protected on the bench. So it's more so like, hey, are you taking out like a Bibarel off their board? Are you taking out pre-evolutions? Do they not have Manaphy or Rabska? There's a lot of ifs. Is it going to be relevant in the standard format? Probably not. Is it going to be a bit of like fun rogue shenanigans to play on PTCGL? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't bring it to like a cup or a challenge, but it'll be a fun deck. Shudel, 1 dark energy, 20 damage, evolves up into Grafai? Evolves up into the crazy lemur with painted fingers. Mischievous Paint, attach up to 3 energy cards from your opponent's discard pile to your opponent's Pokemon in any way that you like. So if you know that your opponent is trying to kind of like loop energy from their discard pile, if they're using Dark Patches, if they're using Sodas, and you're like, no, I want to put those on like weird things. You have Raging Bolt. I don't want you sodding back lightning and fighting energy onto your Raging Bolts. I want those lightning and fighting energy on your Ogerpon where they're doing nothing for you. I guess you can do that now. The second attack on here, Double Dark, it's going to do a multiplier of 40, doing 40 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. So you're kind of messing with their board state, and then it's helping you scale up your damage. Right? Like, you're putting energy on things that can't attack. You're putting it on, yeah, the Ogerpons, energy that doesn't apply to their attack. You're putting energy on their Bibarels so that it's like, yeah, do you want to try and do 100 damage on a coin flip? Probably not. Their Manaphies, things like that, and then trying to scale up. You can Dark Patch, attach this, get the attack online in one go, but I feel like people will be able to play around this card a little too well, right? Like they're not going to have a lot of energy in their discard pile often. Like you might be able to use the first attack and get 3 energy. You're not going to be able to use it turn after turn to get 6 energy scattered across their board. And they're just going to be very careful about how many they put in play so that you're not getting to the points where you're one-shotting, right? To get a one-shot into, let's say, Charizard EX, that's kind of like where the benchmark is for HP and relevant in the meta right now. 330 HP on that. You would need them to have 9 energy in play to get up to 360, right? 8, you get up to 320. You could scale that up with like a tool card, a Vitality Band, but realistically 9 to go for a one-shot consistently. I don't think they even have 9 energy in their deck most of the time. It's usually 7, sometimes 8. Cool card. Is it going to be relevant? Probably not. Maybe for GLC. We're getting Petulant. We got Petulant already. Japan's getting Petulant. Ray already got this in Shrouded Fable? I think we had this in Shrouded Fable as a promo card. As long as this is in the active spot, put 5 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon during checkup for poison. Yeah, we've got this. You guys should know about that one. Alolan Diglett, no energy. 30 damage, flip a coin. If tails, nothing. That's fine. It's not costing you any energy. Yeah, go for it. Alolan Dugtrio, no energy on here. Triple bingo. We got a triple B attack. Oh, this card's probably not going to be good, but I kind of want to make a deck with it now. 120 damage. If you do not have exactly 3 cards in your hand, it does nothing. It's so bad. It is so bad. But it's a triple B card. I'll try and make it work for budget build battles. It's going to be awful though. Like you're not even getting one-shots into most things. But that hair and the triple B attack, that is my spirit animal. Why has he got to have such a garbage attack? Bronzor, Steel, 60 HP on a basic. The first attack, Metal Colorless. It does 20 base damage. Flip a coin if heads 20 more. A little bit expensive to maybe do 40 damage. Evolves up into Bronze Song. Steel Colorless, 50 damage. Steel Double Colorless, 100 as a multiplier. Flip 2 coins for each head's 100 damage. It's realistically bulk. Eternatus, first attack, Dark Energy, 10 base damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon's an EX, 80 more? Like, it's pretty mid. I don't think you're using it for that attack ever. It's not even a way to get through Mimikyu, right? It's 10 damage into Mimikyu. The extra damage only applies into EX Pokemon. The second attack on here, though, Fire Double Dark, 230 damage. You're going to discard a Stadium card in play. If you can't, the attack does nothing. On Eternatus, I don't think you're ever using this attack because you don't have a great way to charge up the attack cost, right? Like you can't be Dark Patching to this. You can't be using the Crystal to reduce attack cost. You'd literally have to manually attach 3 energy. Maybe in GLC where you can use like Double Dragon energy. Maybe. But I think this is actually kind of a good card for Regidrago V-Star. So into Terrapagos, it does exactly 230, which is enough to knock them out. It gets rid of their Area 0 Underdepths, which makes them kind of struggle a little bit. That's legit. Also into single prize decks trying to use Neutralization Center, where it's just like, oh, I don't take damage from EX and V Pokemon. Like, you're a rule box, you don't do anything to me, Regidrago. That's fine. I'm going to discard that Stadium. So like, if you don't have a counter Stadium, it's a way to get through that also. And then the following turn, it's like, now I can do damage to you. It's all right. In that situation, though, I feel like you're usually finding other ways to play around them. Like you're using Dragapult to put damage counters onto things. You're knocking things off the bench with damage counters. That still gets through. Or you're using Curum to knock out things off the bench. I'm pretty sure that Stadium only applies to the active, but it's another interesting tool that you could try slotting into that deck. Will it be relevant? Maybe. I feel like for the Terrapagos situation, it makes a bit more sense. For the Neutralization Center, probably not as much. Into Terrapagos, though, having a way to just knock them out without having to like Lost Zone energy, this seems pretty legit. Tatsugiri EX is a funny card. Admittedly, it's not good. It's So like, don't get your hopes too high for this card. Will it be fun to build decks with this? Absolutely. For some PTCGL shenanigans, for some casual league nights, this card is sick. I love it. For competitive play, God no. It's a Terra Pokemon, so you can be playing the Crystal to help reduce the attack cost. The first one being Fire, Water, 100 damage, ignores all effects on your opponent's active Pokemon, so it's a Shred attacker, can get through Mimikyu in one shot. That's kind of legit. The second attack, Fire, Water, Dark. Look at the top 10 cards of your deck, choose any number of Pokemon you find there and put them onto your bench. You can be stacking your deck with Cypher Maniac, so you search your deck for 2 Pokemon, you put them on top of your deck. You use Academy at Night, you put a Pokemon from your hand on top of your deck. You use Cinnabar Lure? You use this attack, you look at the top 10 cards, you're guaranteeing you hit 3 guys and they go immediately onto your bench. That's cool, and maybe on the other 7 cards you see you get something else. What cards are you going to be getting out? I don't know. Like, the world's kind of your oyster, I guess. You could be getting like things like Pidgeot EX. You could be getting Dusknoir to knock out and take knockouts the next turn. You could be getting like Karascota or Caracosta, whatever his name is, to scale up damage into evolution Pokemon. You could be getting Togekiss to potentially take extra prizes. Like, you can just build some shenanigans with this. It's neat. I don't think it's going to be relevant, but it's neat. We're getting Slackoth. Take it easy, heal 60 damage from this Pokemon. It's got 60 HP. If you're ever having to heal 60 damage from it, it's probably dead already, unless you have like Bravery Charm on it, but like, it's a vibe, I guess. Vigoroth, you're rare candying over this. Slacking EX has an ability slacking off. If your opponent has no EX or V Pokemon in play, it can't attack. But when it does attack, 2 colorless energy, 280 damage, discard an energy from this Pokemon. So you can be using a DTE, get the attack off for 1 energy, reduces you down to 260, so that's not ideal, right? You want to be able to do this damage without any reduction, so you can one-shot into V-Star Pokemon. You have a maximum belt on here, you get up to 330, you're one-shotting stage 2 EX Pokemon. So I feel like you're going to pair this with something that can accelerate energy out. So either a Baxcalibur, I'm kind of leaning towards Matang realistically. So like, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. Rush out Steel Energy means you can slot in things like Zamazenta to be a revenge KO attacker for you, or some other just like kind of relevant attackers. There's single prize slackings as well. So like, if your opponent avoids putting V and EX Pokemon in play, you're just like, well, I'll just attack you with the single prize slacking then. And it's also got quite a bit of pressure into you. So that's legit. And the fact that it's a colorless Pokemon and has 340 HP, you're probably going to be tanking some hits, and then you can just go Charons and pick this up. And then you just get another one going. So yeah, honestly, I'm keen for this card. I think it's really interesting. Zangoose, Fury Cutter, 10 base damage, flip 3 coins. If one of them's heads, you do 20 more. If 2 of them are heads, you do 50 more. And if all of them are heads, you do 80 more. So maybe 90 damage for 1 energy. Not bad for pre-release. I think this is funny. For standard, not great, but like, yeah, for pre-release, kind of funny. Kecleon, it's got an ability that if any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, you're going to flip a coin. If it's heads, you prevent that damage. Kind of legit. We have that on an Ambipom. It saw a bit of success for a while. But is the attack relevant? Let's see. Tongue Whip, it does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Not really, but like, it exists, I suppose. Bouffalant, Awaiting Horns, 40 base damage during your opponent's next turn. If this Pokemon is damaged by an attack, even if it's knocked out, you're going to put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. So like a bit of a counter attack play. We've got Giant Bomb, which you could have on here, making it so that they're taking an extra, I think it's 12. So if they hit this, they're theoretically taking 180. You can be pairing this with the other Bouffalant that has an ability, making it so you take less damage from attacks. You don't need to have 2 copies of the same Bouffalant in play for that ability to trigger. You just need 2 Bouffalant in play. So you play this Bouffalant with the Bouffalant that has Curly something? This guy, I've got one right here actually. Curly Wall? Yeah. Yeah, hang on. This dude. So it makes it so you take 60 less damage from attacks, effectively bringing him up to 190 HP if they're trying to go for a one-shot. For budget build battles, I think this is an interesting combo. For standard, mixed feelings. But yeah, for that format, I think it's definitely neat. Something to experiment around with for sure. Second attack on here though, 4 colorless energy, 150 base damage, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. You have like a DTE that's counting as 2 energy, you're doing 130. I feel like there's better ways to do that kind of damage. You're more so using it for the first attack and kind of being like a counter attack deck, looping it with Charons, looping it with Penny, taking less damage from having a second Bouffalant, boosting up your HP by having a Bravery Charm. There's Exciting Stadium, I think, in this set. We'll get to it in a minute, I'm sure, but it also boosts up your basic Pokemon's HP. So there's ways to kind of pump this up. And yeah, for budget build battles, I could see this being good. For standard, I don't really think it's there. Pre-release though, yeah, could be legit. Helioptile, 10 base damage, second attack 40 base damage, and does 10 damage to itself. 70 HP, you can get it with Buddy Buddy Pfin. Heliolisk, 1 colorless energy, search your deck for up to 4 energy, reveal them and put them into your hand. Okay, like for decks that want to accelerate energy out, maybe you slot this in. I feel like you just use 2 Earthen Vessel, but you have the option to do that as an attack with stage 1 Pokemon now. Oranguru, know their weakness. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon becomes weak to colorless. They can switch her out to remove that effect. They can evolve to remove that effect, but it's kind of neat. Like you can make it so things are weak to Lugia or weak to Zoroark V-Star. It's an option, I suppose. Maybe for GLC. Tandemaus, play around, 10 base damage, flip a coin. If heads, this attack does 10 more damage. And Mousehold, Family March, search your deck for up to 2 Mousehold or Mousehold EX and put them onto your bench. That's kind of legit. So Mousehold EX, it's got an ability that like if they attack it, they take I think it's 2 damage for each of your Mousehold in play. So the funny thing about that though is that card came out after Zoroark from Evolving Skies rotated, so there wasn't a way to like cheat out additional stage 1s because you want to have 6 of those guys in play. And now that we have Area 0 Underdepths, you could theoretically have 8 of those guys in play. So that's like, hey, if they hit you, they take 160 damage, but there just isn't a way to cheat out the stage 1s. Now there's a way to cheat out the stage 1s. That's kind of legit, right? Like you have this in the active, this likely gets knocked out, but then you go into another one, you get more of them out. You kind of keep looping it. I want to double check that Mousehold right now, actually. Is it only when it gets hit or when any of the Mouseholds get hit? Let's see. Let's see. Oh, we're going to, where are we? Trainer Hub, okay. Mousehold EX. If this Pokemon is in your active spot and is damaged from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, put 3 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon for each of your Tandemaus, Mousehold, and Mousehold EX in play. Okay, so you could be able to cheat out your Mousehold EXs. You can get Tandemauses out like easy enough. It's not a Terra Pokemon. We don't have a Terra Mousehold EX. So you'd have to have at least 1 other Terra Pokemon in play, which is likely like a Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. Get Area 0 Underdepths out. You have 8 of these. They attack you. They're taking, what, 8 times 3 is 240? That's not bad, right? Like if a Raging Bolt attacks you, they take a knockout, but then you take a knockout into them. I like that. I actually really like that. The attack on here too, Nom 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 Incisors, 120 base damage, draw 2 cards. So you can be like hitting a stage 2 EX. They have 330, they go down to 210. They attack you, you have 8 guys in play, they take 240. You're taking a knockout as they take a knockout. It might be time to try Mousehold out. I like that. Terrapagos. First time it's got a single prize card, so that's interesting. Prism's Charge. Search your deck for 3 basic energy of different types and attach them to your Terra Pokemon in any way that you'd like. Could be an interesting way to charge up some of these awkward stellar Terra Pokemon's attacks that need like dark, lightning, grass, etc. Like 3 different types. It's like, well, you can use Terrapagos to do it. It's like, yeah, you can, but then I'm putting those energy onto an EX Pokemon. Your opponent goes boss KO. You've wasted a turn accelerating energy out and giving up 2 prizes. I feel like with those guys, you want to be able to get them going in 1 turn with things like Crispin, things like the Crystal A Spec, Dark Patch, etc. If you're having to use an attack to do it, you're in a weird spot, especially because like if it's onto a stage 1 or stage 2 Pokemon, you're using an attack. That means earliest you're using this is your second turn if you go first, right? if you go second, you're not going to have those guys evolved up yet. It's like you use an attack and it's like, well, if I'm trying to charge up a Hydreigon EX, it's still the Dino right now. He's not a Terra Pokemon yet. I can't get the energy out. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I can. It just creates extra steps. Like technically you could like Thornton into it, right? Like accelerate onto like a basic Terra Pokemon and then Thornton it into a Dino and Rare Candy into a Hydreigon. But that is so many extra steps. You're not doing that. Interesting card. I don't think it's fast enough for where the format's at though. Mystery set, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may put them back in any order or shuffle those cards and put them onto the bottom of your deck. Okay. It's like an interesting way to guarantee yourself into some good stuff. It's like, hey, here's the piece I want. Cool, now I'll use Curly and draw into it, or like Squovit or Bibberol, like just something to draw. Get those cards. Or you see those 3 cards and you're like, oh, I don't want them. I'm about to use a research. I don't want to draw into these. Put them on the bottom of my deck. Now I'll draw into the things that I am trying to find. It's kind of legit. Scramble switch. Switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. Then you may move as many energy attached to the old active Pokemon to the new one as you like. So it's sort of like Iron Leaves EX, where when it moves into the active, you can pull a bunch of energy onto it, except it's on an item card and makes it so you can do it onto any Pokemon. It's a little legit. Like you could tank a hit and then just move the energy onto something new. Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't know that it's strong enough to replace something like Prime Catcher or Unfair Stamp, but it's definitely an interesting tool to have. Relaxing Teaser, we talked about it earlier for the Meow Stick. So you can use this card only if you go second and only on the first turn of the game. Well, your first turn of the game, you put an energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon into their hand. Okay, so it's not even discarding it. It's just sort of like slowing them down a little bit. Another A-Spec we're getting is Miracle Intercom. You put 2 supporter cards from your discard pile back into your hand. We have A-Specs that their effects are basically as strong as supporter cards, but on item cards, so you could use 2 supporter cards in a turn. This is saying get 2 supporter cards back. There's going to be niche situations where this comes up. So for like control decks, I could see this being relevant to like loop Pennies, loop Turos, loop Eries, etc. And then you get this back with other ways to just loop into trainer cards. Could come up. And also for ancient box decks, like being able to reuse your Professor Soda just turn after turn, right? Because like it effectively makes it so you have 6 Soda in your deck without having to go Pal Pad and find them. It's just, I use this, I have 2 Soda in hand. I know that I have it for this turn, I know that I have it for my next turn, unless I get Iono'd next turn. Seems legit. I don't know that it is strong enough to replace the other A-Specs we currently have though. Amulet of Hope. It's another one of those ones where it's like, interesting card, but I feel like honestly, I could be alone in thinking this. The A-Specs are almost coming out backwards. Like if we got these as the first A-Specs, they would have come out and they would have been very strong. The fact that we started with Prime Catcher, everything else just feels worse in comparison. It's like, okay, this is cool, but we already have Prime Catcher. Like if Prime Catcher was coming out now, it'd be like, this is broken. It's replacing these things. But going in this order, it's like, we already have Prime Catcher. Because Amulet of Hope basically turns the Pokemon that it's attached to into Jirachi. If it's attached to a Pokemon, they get knocked out. You can search your deck for 3 cards and put them into your hand. Right? Your opponent attacks you, it goes to your turn, so you're guaranteeing yourself set up into 3 very key pieces and can just kind of do whatever you want. You're having a good time. It's a tool card though, so Jamming Tower blocks it. They can Lost Vacuum it. They can also just gust around you, right? Like use Boss's Orders, use Prime Catcher. Get around it and then just not knock out the thing that this is attached to, and it puts you in a weird position. So yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of this card, and if this came out a year ago, I would have thought it was good. And if Prime Catcher was coming out right now, then it would be like, oh, this probably gets replaced with Prime Catcher. But going in this order, it's like, maybe not. Colbur Berry, it's another one of those berry cards. You attach it as a tool card and it makes it so you take less damage from a specific type. So this is going to make it so you take less damage from dark Pokemon. Babbery is the same thing. It makes it so you take less damage from steel Pokemon. We're getting Technical Machine Fluorite. It gives you the attack Fluorite. Discard all energy from this Pokemon. If you do, heal all damage from each of your Terra Pokemon. It's very weird, right? So it's the energy for this. You need Grass, Water, Psychic. Awkward energy to get out. It's not even like you could have this on a Terra Pokemon and reduce the attack cost using the A-Spec Crystal, because this is a tool card. So like if this is on there, you can't have the crystal on there too. Also, healing all your Terra Pokemon is like, well, they're typically pretty bulky guys. Like you're usually taking a shot or two to get taken down. And if you're ever to a point where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to use this and heal them, your opponent's just going to hit you again and put you back to where you were the turn that you used this, right? Like you're like, oh, I have to heal off 200 damage because they just hit me for 200. It's like, they're just going to hit you for 200 again. Like you're just wasting time. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is a use case for this, but to me, it's just like, this doesn't seem great. We're getting Cyrano. You search your deck for 3 Pokemon EX, reveal them, put them into your hand. It's literally Adventurer's Discovery, but for EX Pokemon. I like this. I think it'll see play. Well, I don't think it'll see play. I'm confident it will see play. It'll be very niche, but there will be decks where it's just like, I just want to guarantee my EXs, right? Like Raging Bolt, Ogre-Pawns. They want to make sure that they have all their Ogre-Pawns. You get Ogre-Pawns out, those become card advantage for you. It's like attach grass, attach grass, attach grass. Energy in play, I can get going. It does mean you're not using Sawtooth for turn, but using this one turn, setting you back slightly, I don't think is the end of the world. It's also a great piece to be able to go into for like Pidgeot decks, right? You could use this, get Pidgeot, get Charizard, get something else, rare candy into the Pidgeot, then the Pidgeot searches, gets another rare candy. You have the Charizard in hand already, you rare candy into the Charizard, then you have another EX Pokemon you searched out, either thinning your deck or getting another evolution piece to get like potentially a second Zard online. Pretty legit. Same logic could apply for Dragapult EX, right? Like you just get Pidgeot 2 Dragapults, get them online. Yeah, card seems legit. Clement's Quick Thinking, heal 60 damage from each of your lightning Pokemon. It's okay. Like I guess it's a way to prevent spread decks post-rotation. We're losing Manaphy, so you're not going to have bench protection. If your opponent's doing damage to everything that's damaged, you heal them. Maybe, right? I don't know. I'm not opposed to the card. I just don't know that it's relevant enough. Same logic kind of applies for Jasmine's Gaze. During your opponent's next turn, each of your Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. It's kind of like a way to use a supporter to provide a bit of bench protection. Amp to Amphitheater. So basic Pokemon get 30 extra HP. Okay, I thought this was going to be called like Excited Stadium or something. The one I saw, it said Excited Stadium. This is what I was talking about earlier for that Bouffalant. Just boosting your basics by 30. That's legit. It can make your Raging Bolt EXs bigger, your Ogre-Pawns bigger, your single prize basics bigger, your pre-evolutions bigger, right? So like your Dreepies, your Charmanders, into Regidrago and into Dragapult, where they're going, cool, I'm going to go Hawlucha onto the bench, 10 damage onto your basics that have 70 HP, Dragapult, 6 damage counters on that, it's knocked out. You have this, it says, okay, those 70 HP things, they're actually 100 HP now. You also need to find a counter stadium to get a knockout into those before I can evolve them up, and they're outside of the range of those damage counters taking chaos. I like that. Honestly, I think it's a really interesting card and keen to see how it shakes up the format. Gravity Mountain, kind of going in the inverse of the stadium. The maximum HP of all Stage 2 Pokemon gets reduced by 30. So your Charizards go down to 300 HP. I like it. Combo that I did talk about for this card, like I do card reveals on YouTube Shorts and TikTok, so you might have already seen me talk about this card though, but was with Serena EX. So it has an attack that puts one of your opponent's Pokemon down to 30 HP remaining. You have this stadium, you play this after you've already declared Serena's attack, right? Like if you have this down before Serena does it, they have 300 HP, it puts them down to 270. But if you play the stadium after Serena's gone, right? They have 330, you put them down to 300 HP, or you do 300, so they're down to 30 HP remaining. Then you play the stadium, it reduces their HP by 30, they're not out. That's cool. And it also means you're taking 2 prizes off them, right? Like if you try and go for something like Devolution TM, you knock them down to a pre-evolution, you're only getting 1 prize. But if you play this and knock them out, you're getting 2 prizes. Pretty cheeky. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it for that set. We are getting to see the illustration rare, so if you don't want those spoiled, well, maybe look away. Well, before you do, you know, hit that like button and subscribe, of course. But if you want a bit of a sneak peek, yeah, we're getting Filion, Ceruledge, Feebas, Spiel, Mesprit, the Pfin. I'm a fan of the Pfin. Pikachu. Yeah, they gotta give stuff to Pikachu. It's just fan service at this point. Kecleon, Alolan Doug Trio, Cyrano, Jasmine's Gaze, Milotic EX getting a really nice one. Hydreigon EX getting a nice one, and Pikachu getting another one. Okay, so you got what? That would be the full art, and then this is like a illustrator rare for it. So yeah, cool. And then we are getting to see the like Pokemon Center stuff for this. So there's ways to get this imported. This is just going to be available, I believe, in Japan. So for Australia, I know there's a site Mecca that you can use, and they kind of like ship stuff over. I'm not sure if they do it international or not. Be worth looking into, but I'm sure you can find these on like eBay or other reseller things where they can kind of import it. We might get these at Poke Centers internationally. So like the US, Britain, Australia kind of has one where you just get stuff a little bit later and in more limited supply. But yeah, some interesting deck boxes, sleeves. So one with the Pikachu, the Jasmine on here. Slacking. The Slacking's pretty cool. I like that. Milotic getting one. The Lake Trio getting some sleeves. Is that Mesprit and Meow Stick? Or Esper and Meow Stick? And then what is on this? This is busy. Oh, that's that artwork that they... Okay. So there was, I think, 9 cards released over the last year that all combine into this artwork. And they're just putting it out as a sleeve. Cool. I like it. Hope you guys did kind of like this review of what's just been revealed for the new set. If you have any feedback or any questions, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to keep up with the content. But till next time, stay golden, you Goombas.